that ethics class is to say, really, everything you do in real estate starts with that. And so this time, I thought I'd start a little bit differently. And I said, you know what, when I really think about it, the code of ethics comes from integrity. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have integrity in your person, then how can you actually swear to uphold the fiduciary duties for other people? So we had a long talk about that. And in thinking about that, I was trying to figure out, well, where does integrity come from? I mean, it's easy if you're looking at a building or a bridge or some kind of a structure, you can see if that thing has integrity, if it's all of one piece, or if there's something that's falling apart. But as human beings, we don't come into the world that way. We come into the world as many different pieces that are coming together, influences by our parents, ourselves, all kinds of things we may not even know. And for me, becoming a person of integrity is a process that happens throughout your entire life. And if you can't have that integrity with yourself, then you're not going to be able to show it to anybody else.
Love that, John. I love the academy piece, and I hope what folks really take note is obviously whether they can do it on a large scale, and it sounds like, John, you've really got something very put together and really a neat program for those onboarding process that's there. But really, no matter what size your team is or your brokerage, having a consistency of program to onboard and really be able to kind of pour into people, I think, is critical. So, and obviously starting with ethics and integrity is there. Beth, do you want to roll to? I want to start with actually a quote, though, from Dwight Eisenhower.
Perfect.
And then we'll kind of dig in there and we'll talk about the qualities. So Dwight Eisenhower was quoted in saying that in order to be a leader, they must first have followers. And to have followers, they must have their confidence. Hence, the supreme quality for a leader is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible, no matter whether it's on a sections of a gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office. Next slide. If a man's associates find him guilty of phoniness, if they find that he lacks forthright integrity, he will fail. His teachings and actions must square with each other. The first great need, therefore, is integrity and high purpose. So I love that quote with Dwight Eisenhower. I think it dovetails perfectly, John, in what you're sharing about going through ethics, right, and then really kind of tapering it into what is the foundation of ethics, and that is integrity that's there. Go to the next slide. So let's talk about, and maybe we can ask Ben, and others there, what qualities define a person of integrity? What stands out in regards to that? I believe we've got Susan also.
So go ahead, speak up.
Thinking. I think being candid, being very candid, being very honest, authentic.
I totally agree. I mean, without authenticity and without actually following through with the things that you say, then how can anybody trust you?
Yeah, here. Well, in real estate, we always have an opportunity to maybe do something a little bit shady. We deal with people that do things that aren't, especially as a broker owner, the hiring practices. So I've always been a person of integrity, which, you kind of lose some people, but it's better that they're gone. And it also teaches the staff that we don't tolerate any of that. So, you're attracted to people that are like you. So when you start it that way, you attract people that way.
That's wonderful. Dave, can I jump on this for a second?
Yes.
So I want to commend you for saying that. One of the hardest things that you can do as a broker is to decide to let somebody go. And if you look at a top earner and this person is not meeting the ethical standards that you have set in your company, and they're not a person of integrity, that poisons the entire branch or maybe the entire company. So if you can take the challenge to actually stand up for what you believe in and say to this person who might be contributing a lot of money to your brokerage, we just can't, we can't abide that particular behavior. So you either have to step up and not do that, or we have to say goodbye to you because we're not the place for you. That is the mark of being somebody who has integrity. Sounds like you've done that.
It wasn't a high producer, but the first agent I had a couple of short sales where he had his own buyers, and it just was really kind of shady. And that was kind of the last straw when I found out, looking over his paperwork and the documentation was like, okay, this isn't working. You need to find somewhere else to go. So it's kind of a last straw. But when I found out is when I acted, and so my first agent was no longer. So.
Right. Tough, right? Because you're trying to build momentum, right, Ben, and go through. This is the first agent, and you're trying to kind of get things going, and like I said, kind of build that momentum of the brokerage. So sometimes you may find yourself in a compromising, or you feel like you maybe oversee certain things because, just the situation that you're in. But, again, to John's point, commending you that recognizing to say, look, I got to start with a solid foundation, and we've got to make sure that, if people aren't living up to that, that we've got to move on. So
it always works out too, because I literally had another agent that walked in from my old company and said, hey, I really want to join, and I severed one and accepted another like the same day. So it always works out when you do it right. It's how I found.
That's great. Ben, I think that you bring up a huge point that I think a lot of times we don't realize the impacts, the long-lasting impacts, or the long-term or futuristic impacts when we make those small decisions in the moment. And so people are watching us as leaders, and as you're growing your brokerage, there's a lot of people that are out there, and we don't even realize how much they're watching us. And so the moves that we make will determine. And so if you allow for people that maybe take shortcuts, or other people, things, obviously, someone that's lacking of integrity, those that have integrity that you're trying to grow and you really want to be a part of, and if that's a core value of yours, they're going to be repulsed from that. They're not going to want to come through, and then they're going to watch the steps that you move or that you make that's there. And so by letting go of one, sometimes, again, it opens the door for somebody to say, that's what I want to be a part of, right?
Absolutely.
That's great. So integrity, to increase and keep your influence, you must have integrity, which is really what we're talking about here as we go through. There's a study, though, from UCLA that surveyed 1,300 senior executives, and 71% of these senior executives said that integrity was the single most important quality needed to succeed in business. I'd say that it's the single most important quality needed to attract and retain top talent, which is why it is our second session today for us to kind of go through. And I think that, if this is one of those ones, one of those sessions, though, that for me personally, just to be very open and transparent, that I think sometimes steps on my toes. I think hopefully after we're done today, you'll probably feel, or hopefully you will feel, that it steps on your toes a little bit too, because I think when we think about integrity and we think about it in its holistic side, a lot of times we can think about specific, maybe bigger ethical type dilemmas. Ben, you raised a situation in terms of maybe some shady business that's there, and sometimes we can get drawn into that being the fundamental part. But for me personally, and we'll talk a little bit more, and I'll share some more as we get through, I think integrity, where it steps on my toes a lot of times, is in the little things that we do. And it's in the commitments maybe that we make, that maybe we do quickly, quick type of commitments that maybe our follow through isn't quite there, or just a different variety of reasons for that. And so again, this time that we've got together probably will step on some toes as we kind of do some evaluation that's there. But I think it's important for us to really take that, take kind of a note and reflect, though, internally, whether we're consistent with integrity across the board. I think John brought up earlier, though, integrity allows others to trust you, and trust is the most important factor in the relationship. And I think what John had shared earlier, though, is, again, it's in the small things, and that's really what we're going to dive into also later on today, too. So,
Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about trust? Because building trust is, this is what we're talking about here.
Absolutely, please.
It's the glue that holds people together, but actually creating an environment where there is trust is not all that easy.
Yes.
You know, people have to feel safe in order to feel that they can trust you.
Absolutely. John, maybe share a couple ideas or thoughts in regards to how do you build trust, especially as you're in through the lens of attracting and retaining top talent, probably more focused in on attracting top talent in the recruiting side, because those that are in your on your team, they've obviously got a closer viewpoint of you and how you live and that consistency that's there. But talk about, you know, maybe some of the thoughts or how do you focus in on building trust with those that you're talking to come to recruit, so to speak.
So I'd say that from my perspective, one of the strongest ways to build trust with your team is to handle the places where people are scared or frightened or sure that there isn't any trust. So, you know, when you have somebody that, say, is angry or accuses you, or where maybe you've made a mistake, an authentic apology can often begin the process of building that trust by acknowledging whatever the failing might be. And sometimes just by acknowledging the fact that you must have made a mistake, because otherwise this wouldn't have existed. And the mistake might have been that you didn't communicate properly. So if you can open the door by saying, mea culpa, what have I done? And can we, you know, take a step forward and fix whatever it is that's bothering you? That disarms somebody, and then you have to listen carefully to what they have to say. And if you can hear what they're really saying, what the real core of the problem is, and you can address that and not just let it go by the wayside, that's the strongest way to build trust, because those people who detract from you, if you can win them over, they become your biggest champions.
That's fantastic, John. Absolutely. That's great. If you want to hit the next part. You know, Ben actually talked a little bit about kind of the one agent that he had, and I think we all probably have different stories that are there. We'll start kind of at a macro and, like I said, kind of from an ethical and bigger scale, and we'll kind of dovetail it down a little bit as we go through our time today. But I do think that integrity and maintaining integrity, especially within the roles that we're in, really starts with making a decision today versus putting yourself in a circumstance or situation and try to make that decision when maybe a crisis or something specific occurs. And so one story that really puts this into focus for me is the Tylenol crisis. And I don't know if any of you remember back in the early 80s, 1982 actually, the Tylenol crisis that had occurred. And Tylenol, within their mission statement, they have a quote that states, to operate within honesty and integrity. So that's really what, again, their mission statement states. But back in 1982, there was a time around the Chicago area where somebody had pulled off multiple or a bunch of basically bottles of basically the Tylenol and the capsules, and they'd taken they basically had poisoned these capsules and then put them back on the shelf, and they began to sell. And what happened was, throughout this time in the investigation that was there, they found that actually there was many people that actually died from this. And so Tylenol, upon hearing the news, within 1 hour of understanding that it was actually the Tylenol bottles and the poisoned capsules that actually caused these people to die, within 1 hour, the president made a $100 million decision to pull all bottles of capsules off the shelves immediately. Later on, he was interviewed by a radio station or by a TV station to say, hey, so, I mean, how did you come across to make that decision to recall all of those bottles, obviously costing your company, you know, millions upon millions, you know, up to $100 million decision that's there, and do it so rapidly? And his quote back was that basically when he was quoted, he said, I was practicing what we agreed upon in our mission statement. So I think as leaders, each of you, as you're growing your teams, as you're growing your brokerages, it really starts with making a decision, like what he shared, that they made a decision, this is how we're going to operate, which then in those moments of crisis, our character, and it makes it a lot simpler for us to just execute upon, you know, that decision that we make earlier on from it. Because it's always easier to do the right thing when you've already made that decision. So I don't know if that kind of resonates the same way, and whether any of you have different stories or a story that you'd like to share that, you know, again, you made that decision earlier and then it came up later on in which you kind of had it and it, maybe it was a lot easier to do that. Does anybody have? John?
Yeah, I mean, this has nothing to do with the company, but it's something that actually kind of formed my idea about how to make a decision and stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
So about 20 years ago, I was a smoker, and I heard the little voice that said, "You need to stop." And I took that voice seriously, but I quit before. And in quitting before, I always sort of allowed myself a puff or a cigarette, and then eventually I'd start smoking again. But this time I thought, I've got to do it a little bit differently. And so I framed it this way, that I'm going to make this decision, but having made this decision, the only freedom I have is to obey the decision I made. Because if I don't obey that decision, that means I'm being controlled by the cigarettes. So and that worked for me. I've never had a puff since, not even one single puff, and I don't even think about it. And in fact, when I quit that time, I knew it was done because that conviction inside of my heart made it so. So now, when there's a tough decision to be made, I make that decision and I stick with it because that's the only freedom I have is to stay with the choice that I made.
Wow. John, go ahead.
I had that happen in my company. When I merged with another small broker in 2016, the two of us sat down and went through our core values and did all that stuff just, with the two of us, basically a 2-person strat plan. And one of the agents that had been with me for a very long time, that I've actually been friends with for probably 30 years, I knew in my gut was going to be a tough fit for where we were heading. And as time went on in 2017, he was really struggling with personal issues that were, bad personal issues that were flowing over into his work. And I was on vacation in Hawaii, and both Carrie, my business partner, and I had to step in and put out a bunch of fires with his clients, or our clients that he was doing transaction with. And when I got back from Hawaii, I had to let him go. And I knew it was the right thing to do, but I put it off and till things got out of hand, and I had to go to his house, knock on his door, and just say, "Randy, I wanted to do it face to face," and it was so painful. I'm sure it was painful for him, but for me to do that, because I care about him very much, but it was just really hard, and it was the right thing to do, and I don't regret it, but it was a hard decision to make, and letting him go was painful, and watching him, struggle with his personal stuff, but knowing that, we can't put our company at risk, and he came really close, and it was, so yeah, that was tough. That was tough.
Wow.
Good for you.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Both the stories that you both shared, John and Susan, it reminds me of kind of a paradox, right? And that it seems counterintuitive when you say it, but then really you understand it. And when you hear stories like what both of you have shared, you really kind of it really kind of brings context to it. And that is, it's inside our discipline that we find freedom. And I think that a lot of times we feel like discipline restricts us. It keeps us active and it holds on to us. To what, John, you said earlier about quitting smoking, you had to mentally shift and say, I will not give myself permission outside of this decision. This decision is going to be the discipline that I'm going to choose. And yet, I'm sure you can share now that the freedom that you have found within that discipline of not smoking is probably astronomical in the impacts of your life over time. And your story also about that discipline from coming home from Hawaii and saying, we've got to part ways. And this is going to be very difficult and very hard conversation that's going to be there. But I've got to be disciplined. And no matter what is shared or said in the context of the conversation, I need to follow through with this and be disciplined in this from the decision that's there. And again, the freedoms that come from that part too. So,
yeah.
I would like to second that, actually. It's kind of interesting that you guys you were talking about, Susan was talking about parting ways with people that didn't fit. I think we all, either is, once you start having any influence over someone else, that's when the burden of leadership really hits, where you have to figure out who you're going to align yourself with and who you're not. And it's interesting, small group, got a $10 million producer, hard to let that person go. But, I think Dave and I talked about it at the time. It's the best thing for my business. Why I was late today is somebody came in and let themselves go, because we got to the point where we now have the standards a little bit more. The integrity is on them more than on us, because they realize when they're a misfit. They realize whenever, hey, you know what, these are the standards in which everybody's going to live. And it's been great for our business, because we didn't have that. And as hard as it was for Susan to let that partner go, as hard as it was for me to let that $10 million producer go, and considering we only have like $60 million worth of production, we're sitting here going, now these people are coming to us and going, hey, you know what, I'm misfit. I'm the one that's bringing people down. I know my attitude sucks. I know that I can't change it. It's not you, it's me. And once it gets to that point, that integrity piece, it's a blessing. It's a blessing when you hold everybody at the same standard. When you have some people at a different standard than other people, then obviously it's a misfit. But anyways, it's been great trying to because again, I have to hold myself to that standard now. Because before I was like, it's only you guys that have to do that, but now I have to hold myself to that standard. But it's been a real blessing to have everybody on the same standard. So it's nice. That integrity piece is crucial to the business.
That's fantastic, Brad. I think it actually goes directly to what John shared earlier in regards to setting the expectations and having a clear program. And as John shared, he has a specific academy that all new team members go through. Again, that consistency of expectations, how we operate, what's our MO, what our, how we roll. This is who we are, and this is how we roll. And it allows then for people that are not in alignment to say, you know what, maybe this isn't the right situation, which protects you in addition to protecting them. So,
can I step into that a little bit? So part of the academy, I've got 975 agents. That's a lot of agents. And there's a legacy of the way these people are performing that exists sometimes many decades before I arrived on the scene. So sometimes there has to be a slight shift in the way the brokerage is going or in the practices that some of these people do. And I know that I can't do that overnight. So when I bring the new agents in, I say, here's what I expect of you, and here's how I expect you to perform. And it's quite possible and even likely that you're going to have a deal with another agent in our brokerage who is going to meet that standard. And when that's not the case, you don't have to take it on yourself to teach them. What you can do is say, geez, my broker had a conversation with me about this, and he asked me to just tell you, you should give him a call so we can clarify this particular position. And it's not me, it's him that's doing it. So you understand? I mean, that really helps them stay at that level. And it also informs the older agents that, yes, we are expected to live up to this standard, and if you have a problem with it, I'm the guy to talk to. So
I love that, John. I think that sometimes we find ourselves in situations, Brad described earlier, obviously, a team member that had been on this team for a long while, and there was kind of a conviction that occurred of this is the direction we need to go. And how do you take care of, or how do you shift the mind, whether it be that it's a reality that maybe it's time for you to part ways, or move them to the direction you're going. And John, peer accountability is huge. And so really bringing forth that ownership component, because that's really what you're doing is you're empowering that new team member to say, I need you to own, how we operate, what we do here, the integrity that we perform at. And I want you to own it so that even if you're coming across an agent or someone who's been with us for 20 years, it doesn't matter. This is what our expectations are, and let me give you a path, that can assist because I need your help on this.
Sure, it's not always easy because, of course, sometimes those older agents they come very angry at me, feeling like they're being taught, you're teaching me and you can't do that. I've been in the business longer than you. And so I say, well, I hear you. but here are the reasons why we're performing in this direction. And this is the standard I've set for everybody. I'm not going to make an exception for you. This is not a grandfather clause situation. So if this is not working for you, I understand that. But in order to fit in the organization that I'm leading and that I'm responsible for, that's what I expect.
Powerful. Beth, you want to hit that? Integrity. You know, I think as we talk about integrity and we talk about some of the things that we're brought up really are more public type things that, you know, a lot of people can see. I love this quote from Sir Francis Bacon, though, that he brings forth, though, it's not what we profess in public, but where we walk and what we practice in secret that gives us integrity. Because it really comes forth is when people are not, when we have a viewpoint that people are not seeing what we do and we make those right decisions, again, that's really what continues to build integrity that's there. You know, the definition of integrity is the adherence to moral and ethical principles, soundness of moral character, and honesty. You know, John kind of alluded to this earlier, and I'm curious to hear from you all. There's a question that I read out there a few months ago, and I've shared and asked different people their perspective on this. But do you feel that there's a difference between business ethics and personal ethics, and why or why not?
I can jump in. That the ethics of your business, that would be the company as a whole. Let's say the core values of the company may not completely match up with your personal core values. That's a possibility. Yeah. And if that doesn't if there isn't a match, let's say that for one of my core values is honesty. And that's hugely important. If it were not a core value of my organization, then I would be suffering all the time. So there has to be an alignment. It doesn't have to be perfect, but there has to be an alignment of those values.
Absolutely. John, bring it down to a personal individual level is really kind of the context of the question was. So you personally, I think that sometimes we've heard in the past, you know, there's a separation of this is my ethics within business context, and this is my ethics within my personal life, almost a separation. So within that perspective, do you see that there's a difference or a different level of accountability or a different level of expectations for individuals to be held at or that they should viewpoint what their business ethics are versus their personal ethics that's there?
My personal feeling is if that's the case, then you're not integrated. You don't have integrity.
I agree.
If you are doing something differently in your personal life than what you're espousing in the business, then you're a fake. That doesn't really bring you together as a whole person.
I agree. I can't, you know, I mean, if you're comfortable living two different lives, what does that say? I mean, if you have full integrity in one place and only partial integrity in another place, how does that work? I mean, that's just going to make for discord. I mean, I can't be like that, and because I can't be like that, I can't want that from my team or my people. I mean, I'm looking for somebody who lives their whole life. And again, nobody's perfect. It's not like, oh, across the board everything's, but that's what you shoot for. You know, that's always your intention, is to be the same human being in every part of your life, whatever that is you choose. And look at what speaks to you and bring that into your work, your family, your, you know, everything.
Yeah. Tony, I saw you nodded. What anything you want to add into that in regards to business versus personal?
Yeah, I think you need to be consistent, whether it is business or personal, because at some level it's kind of all the same. I mean, if I'm living one kind of life and trying to have my people live a different kind of life, that's never going to work. At some point, that's going to be found out.
Absolutely. Love that.
I can give a personal example if you want a quick one.
Please.
When I came into real estate, I had a couple of mentors who said to me, you should keep the fact that you're a gay man quiet. Because I've been out for a very long time. I've been with my husband now for 25 years. So, and I thought a lot about that, and I thought, well, okay, maybe some people won't want to use me, but if they don't want to use me because I'm being honest, then they're not the people I want to work with. So when I got into management and it, you know, it's a big corporation, so there are company functions, I unabashedly would say, oh, wives are invited, why my husband would like to come, or he's decided not to come. And for me, that statement is just the same as if I had a wife. And it caused some discomfort with some of the people in the management team at first. They felt like somehow I was pushing who I was on them. But no, it wasn't that at all. It was simply being honest about who I am and being forthright about what my relationships are. And at this point, everybody's very happy with that. So.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, right, John? I mean, and a great illustration. I think that today's world where we're at, whether we like it or not, there's a sense of transparency, whether we actually are seeking it or not, based upon Facebook and, you know, video, Snapchat, all these instruments and all these tools that are out there. Whether you like it or not, there's going to be a transparency that's going to come forward. And if you constantly try to hide or separate, right, which is what, you know, Susan, you were talking about, is trying to have this distinguishing these separations between my personal life and how I live here and business, it's going to get found out. And I think that, again, I wholeheartedly agree. I asked that question because I think that we've seen people try to separate the two. Well, this is who I am in business and this is who I am in my personal life. And I really think as leaders, we have so many eyes on us. If you are in that category, I would just challenge to really think about that, because I do think that people want to follow someone who is authentically, you know, real across the board. And I think that that's important. So thank you.
Dave, if I've got a moment,
yep.
You know, that was one of the things that was hardest to train. You know, we're all talking about millennials joining our business. Obviously it's our model to recruit, because there's some great things about millennials in your business. One of the biggest disconnects was, well, but I have this professional page and I have this my personal page, and my professional page is this and my personal page is this. And one of the things that, you know, real estate is not a job, it's a lifestyle. You know, so when you get into real estate, if you don't know that, you know, most of the people here, you know, they're nodding their head going, oh my gosh, yeah. You have to be authentic. You know, we definitely hire all different types, and one of the conversations is and two different people. John, I appreciate your candor. You know, I have a newly out gay person who just said, well, wait a second, I haven't really gone out there with my family and some other things. They said, well, then you better get used to it, because your clientele will find out. I don't know what, it doesn't matter what you're hiding. If you have a religious belief that may be in conflict, or if you have a personal belief that's conflict, something that's not outwardly noticeable, your clientele will find you out in 2 seconds flat, because we're in a high trust business. And if you can't provide them who you are, you can't find out who they are. And so I think from a millennial standpoint, you've got to get them off of the, you know, but this is how I act with my college buddies, and this is how I act with, you know, clientele. So just wanted to give that little piece.
Brad, if he ever wants to have a conversation with somebody who's been out for a long time, you can give him my phone number. I'm happy to talk.
Well, yeah, and I look at it this way. You know, there's all different kinds of outs. You know, I mean, whether you know have certain religious beliefs that you're going, oh gosh, I don't know whether or not somebody's going to love me for that, or you know, hey, I've got 6 kids, and for a long time it was like, I don't know how much I should post about my kids on whatever. You know, early on in real estate. Real estate is definitely one of those things where people already give, you know, there's a 5-second, ooh, this is who you are. I don't know whether or not I'll work with you or not. Somebody once told me to change my last name. It's Bergamini. I'm like, oh, who's going to remember Bergamini? I'm like, but that was, you know, we started in the business 17 years ago. That was when old guard was passing and new guard was kind of coming in. And so, you know, things have changed. I mean, you know, people are pretty open to just about anything and everything. If they're not the people you want to work with anyways. So it's definitely pick the people that are going to work with you.
That's exactly right. And I think, you know, again, as we're talking through, you know, people, it breaks down trust. And we talked about trust being the glue, right, of leadership and the glue of integrity itself. If you all of a sudden find something out about somebody that is in direct contrast in the way that they've presented themselves, I think all of us have felt that, where all of a sudden our defenses go up a bit, and we actually, that lack of trust changes, and we're going, wait, what else is this person not sharing about? And it may not even be that it's a negative thing. It's just, when you see that conflict in life, though, again, it breaks down the trust that's there.
Very hard to recover from broken trust.
Absolutely. Let's dive into. I want to go through seven areas or seven seven qualities of building or having integrity within our life. So there we go. Model consistency of character. Solid trust only develops when people can trust us all the time. And that's really what we're talking about in terms of, both business and personal. It really kind of dovetails together, is that when they see a consistency in your life, that actually feeds and builds trust. Doesn't take away from it. It actually builds trust. When they see how you are at work, and how you are at the grocery store, and how you are, at, wherever you're at, when they see a consistency across the board, it again builds trust, and that character is obviously a big deal in building that trust. I think, John brought up a specific point in his life in which, some people may have wanted to pull back and kind of not share that. And I think what's interesting, what some people find that they hide, or they not necessarily hide, but they don't want to release that, they don't want to open up about things like that, or any other parts of our life, though, that it will actually break down trust. But I think, John, and you can certainly add in, but I think that by being open and sharing, right, it actually builds stronger trust with people. When you're able to be open and authentic in who you are, and they see that, again, that consistency across the board in character.
People know when you speak from the heart and when you speak the truth.
Yep, exactly. That's great. I'll go to the next one. Second quality, honest communication. And I think we've talked a little bit about that already, but trustworthiness comes from living in alignment. Your words and your actions have to be aligned. So you cannot go through your leadership, and as you're talking to and attracting new agents, or even retaining, the top talent that you have, you can't say, do what I say, not as I do. If they don't see you practicing integrity in all that you do, and that you're aligned in terms of your actions and your words, it actually, again, breaks down, and people see you, or it breaks down that trust, and that, again, that viewpoint of you being integrous within it. We talked about how many eyes are on us that we don't even realize that are watching what we do. And so that's where you've got to have a consistency in honest communication that's there. So third quality, value transparency, really kind of threads with our conversation. All of these really bid together, or really kind of build upon each other. But again, people will eventually find out about you. And this includes your flaws, your, shortcomings, areas that you're trying to grow within. If you try to flex or pretend that you're strong in something, somebody's going to find out about that. In the context of recruiting people, if you don't have a fantastic CRM or some type of new tool that's out there, and you're talking to this recruit and you're trying to, bring forth and make it seem like you've got this great system, all these tools, all these things that are there, it's going to break down trust. If you do get them to come over, they're going to find out at some point that that's an area of lacking, and it's going to break the trust. And as John mentioned earlier, once you break that trust, it is extremely difficult to then recover from that point that's there. And so if there are shortcomings, and I think that that's one of the things that I've learned through my time in recruiting and retaining people, is being open and being transparent with individuals. When I'm talking to a new recruit and they're asking, I think one of the most powerful questions that's there, and that sometimes I even lead with, is, what areas aren't you good at, or your company's not good at? Where do you see the growth potential, or what you're looking to build within on it? I think people appreciate that. They want to hear, everything that's there. They don't want to hear just about the roses and all the promises and everything that's there, that you're trying to put forth this great foot forward. We obviously want to share and flex that, but they also want to see the reality of everything. We all have kind of a hidden reluctance, especially within, the recruiting dance that happens. We all kind of, have heard stories, or we've had it happen to ourselves where we bought into something that then all of a sudden we found out behind the door that's really not, what's going on over there. And we feel like, we got slighted.
Hey, Dave, I'll just step on that a little bit.
Please.
We sometimes have career fairs where people who are interested in real estate come to the company and they just want to find out what we're about. And so part of what I tell them is you may not be for us, and we may not be for you, because if you're thinking that you're going to come into this business and work part-time, I'm the wrong company, and there are other companies out there that are going to work really well for you. And I'm honest about that and say, we're expensive if you're doing this as a part-time. And there are other companies that would really suit your great brokers out there that would suit your needs much better than I will. So if my price is too high, that's okay, because we're looking for a certain kind of agent. And when that agent sees that as a value added, then they're going to come. So.
That's fantastic. And I think, again, it lays exactly with what each of you are committed and looking to do as leaders, right? In your growth and growing your teams or growing your brokerages as a whole. It's understanding and really embracing what your strengths are, but also what those weaknesses are, or those areas that, again, we're not a good fit, and recognizing it. Because to John's point, if I try to sell around, maybe it's a cost, or maybe it's whatever it may be, because it's somebody that I really like, or I really think, I want to have a part of the team, or I feel like I need to grow and add this person, and they're a part-time person, you're kicking the can down the road of a bigger issue that's going to be tackled later on when they come in and go, John, this isn't at all what I expected. I'm really disappointed on how much money and the fees and all these things are there. And again, you're pushing down, and actually it will hurt you in the long run. So being comfortable with, again, your strengths and your weaknesses, and openly and transparently sharing that with people, I think is critical. So it's great. If you want to go to humility, I think that this is one of those things that as a society, we've really gained an appreciation of humility and humbleness that's there. That's not all, if you look historically, it's not always been that way. But I think right now where we're at, which is a good place to be, is as a society, we see humility. People want to follow people that are humble, right? That have a sense of humility. No one wants to follow somebody that they know or they perceive to be all about themselves, all about them getting the glory, or seen as hyper successful and so on. People want, again, they see they want to follow leaders that are going to invest and help build them up, not that they're being seen to be added to make that person look better or be better that's there. So I think, again, people value humility within things. The next one is to support others. Nothing develops or displays your character better than putting others first. Great quote from Zig Ziglar that most of you probably have heard, since we're all kind of in that sales arena. But if you help enough other people succeed, you will also. Was a great quote from Zig that's there. I think that, again, when you lead in a servant heart perspective to support and help others, then, again, people are attracted to that. They want to be a part of an organization and follow individuals like that. And which feeds into actually the next one, which is to have an attitude of service. Giving of yourself and your time to others shows that you care. It goes back to, again, having a consistency of what you say and what you do. Saying that you're a servant leader, saying that you have an attitude of service, if you talk that, yet you're always busy, you're never available, you never look to pour into individuals, you never take the time to invest in people, there's an inconsistency within that. And at some point, people are going to find that out. And it's going to be very much a breakdown of trust. And again, will push people away whenever there's not that. So it's truly having a heartfelt attitude of service within it. I want to get to this last one because I think it fits a lot in what I had shared earlier about kind of stepping on toes, because I really think that, this last one is critical for us, and that is to fulfill promises. And I think that a lot of times we get focused on the big things, but what I see within this particular quality is the small things in our life. I want to start this this conversation about fulfilling promises with a short story of a little girl who her dad promised her, that tonight is going to be the night. She loves Scrabble, and tonight, honey, when I get home from work, we're gonna play Scrabble. We're gonna take some time, have a lot of fun together, and spend time together and play Scrabble. And so the dad went off to work and doing what he does and working hard. And 4 o'clock came and 5 o'clock came, and he was so engulfed in his work and really kind of had the head down, and a lot of issues, challenges, problems that he had to solve, things that were going on that he just blew past the time. And next thing you know it, he got home and it was 7, 8 o'clock place at nighttime, and his little girl was standing at the door waiting for him to show up and come in. And he said, honey, I'm so sorry. I got tied up at work. I had all these other things. And, it is already just too late for us to be able to play Scrabble tonight. And so, you know what? We're just not going to be able to do that. And of course, brokenhearted, the little girl looked up to her dad and said, Daddy, how much money do you make per hour? And the dad, perplexed, kind of looked back and said, honey, I'm not sure why you're asking that, but, I make $20 an hour. And again, I know that you're disappointed, but dad has to provide for the family. I have to work hard and those type of things. And then you could see the thought process in the little girl, and the little girl came back and said, Daddy, can I borrow $4? And he's like, no, you know what, honey, it's time for bed. Why don't you go upstairs, you go to bed. I don't know why you're asking, this particular thing. We just need to move on. Later on, dad kind of felt a little guilty. As a father of 4, I can certainly relate to that type of a conversation with my child. Went upstairs and said, honey, I'm really sorry for kind of pushing you out about the $4, but but why were you looking at asking, why did you ask for the $4? And she looked up at her daddy and said, because I know I've got $16 in my piggy bank, and with that $4 extra, I can buy an hour of your time. That kind of story impacts me. Sometimes it takes a child to wake us up with our own integrity in the small things of life and fulfilling and keeping promises. And I think sometimes within our families, we almost brush it over to the side because we've got all of these other fulfilling pieces that we've got to get done and all the hard work that's there. But fulfilling promises really is about all the little things in our life that's there. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we value the promises, the commitments that we make. I'm going to share with you guys 3 quick steps to keep your promises that are not on your worksheet that's there, and then I'll open up for anybody, any thoughts or comments in regards to that. And the 3 steps are, number 1, and these are things that really helped me out because I found myself in the challenges that, in terms of opening up promises, that these 3 things really helped me make sure that I was a person that fulfilled and kept my promises. So the first one is make fewer commitments. So make fewer promises. It will allow you then to be able to make your yays be yays and your nays be nays. So saying no more often actually helps you fulfill your promises. So I think that's the first thing that really helps me out. The second one, write them down. You're 86% more likely to actually follow through with something, whether it be a promise, a goal, or anything, if you take the time to write it down. So if you make a promise, write it down. 86% more likely to complete it. And the third one is, and it really goes to what John spoke about in regards to smoking, but make your word, make your promises meaningful. Make it actually be a priority to keep it. So inside your mind, not allowing yourself to make an excuse or open yourself up for things to say, let me give an excuse, like the dad made that excuse to his daughter about, well, I got tied up at work, I had all these things, and that's why I couldn't fulfill my promises there. But really, again, prioritizing our word. So as I share those 3 in the story itself, anything kind of resonate or hit any of you, in regards to fulfilling your promises and why it's important?
If you don't fulfill those promises, then you've lost the trust of the people involved. And typically, you don't make promises to strangers.
Yeah.
Typically, you make promises to the people who are closest to you. So it's easy for us to think, oh, they'll understand because they love me, I love them. But without fulfilling that promise, you've damaged the very thing that you are working for to begin with, the thing that's the staff of your life or what supports you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Anyone else? Ben, any thoughts in regards to that?
That's kind of why I'm here, is to figure out, the time blocking. I don't make the promises, but there are things that I need to personally follow up on and take care of. So, John, how do you give yourself more time in a day?
Great question.
Well, okay, I'll tell you that the best thing that I can do is to eliminate the stuff that doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to do sometimes because what you really want to do is all the stuff that's easy and get that done. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the easy stuff is not that important. And you just set that aside and really prioritize the things that matter. So that's the best I can tell you.
That's fantastic advice, John. Anybody else have any tips in regards to organizing their day or prioritizing to ensure, as been asked, how to fit so much in? Tony, Brad?
Yeah, it's that. Thanks for calling me out, Dave. It's funny because there's never enough of time in your personal life or professional life to get everything done in real estate. What's helped me out a lot is and I don't know if Ben, you may or may not be there, but the sooner you can get there, the better. Is find yourself somebody who is not like you, somebody who helps you be accountable. And most of us at some point in time, when you get to any kind of success, the first thing you're doing is filling in your weaknesses. And God knows you have more weaknesses than strengths, probably. Most of us do. And then you can focus on your strengths, whatever that strength is. And those strengths because other people see them. Other people are telling you your strengths. You're not going, hey, this is my strength, I'm really cool. Other people are going, hey, you're really good at this. Maybe this is where you need to go. So I focus, how I be more productive is I focus on my strengths, and then find those people in your life that can focus on your weaknesses. Usually for us people who have spouses, significant others, usually that's the first place to start because they're usually picking up all the slack that you're leaving. And so if you can find an accountability partner, especially on your timing and things that you're doing, to keep you more accountable. And again, Dave and I are friends. There's other friends of mine that I work with that, they call me on my, be honest, they call me on my shit. I mean, they're saying, hey, honestly, you're just not doing what you said you're going to do a year ago. And so those are the types of people you need to keep close to you because they're going to be, honest with you. So that's my suggestion about creating more time for yourself. John was perfectly eloquent about it. There's a lot of this stuff that just doesn't matter. And we spend all day doing this. I'll learn something to figure out how to do something that I might do someday in the future. Yeah, none of that stuff matters.
Brad, I really like that a lot. Thanks so much for sharing it. There's a little saying that somebody told me when I was maybe in my teens. Do your best and leave the rest. Mm. And that's it. You do what you can do and then accept that you can't do everything, and that's okay because it doesn't ever all get done.
Yep.
Never. So.
To dovetail both John and Brad, Ben, actually I was just listening to a podcast this morning and a tip that actually came from that particular podcast and talking about how do you get so much work done? And actually the question was proposed to Tony Robbins. And so his process or what he looks at is RPM. So it's R, P, and M. So number one, What results are you looking for? So it's really getting a focus in regards to what am I trying to accomplish? And so I think then first things first, it comes from a point of perspective of knowing what are the results that I'm after? If I'm looking to grow my brokerage or grow my team by X number of agents, and that's the results that I'm looking for, then I need to keep my perspective and my focus in regards to that particular result that I'm looking at, and then prioritize from that point. So then the P part, so that's the R, is results. What am I really after? And what am I really after, and what am I really trying to accomplish? Those results. The second part within P, purpose. And that is when you look at purpose, making sure that you're in alignment with, again, the reasons why you're looking for that. Because, again, we will find ourselves being able to accomplish more when our purpose are in alignment, rather than just say, I want to make $300,000 this year. And that could be a result that I'm at. If I don't have purpose around the 300,000, then if the likelihood is I'm probably not going to execute on the things that are going to be most important to it. And really that's what John was talking about earlier in regards to focusing on, what are those most important things? The 80-20 rule is a fantastic deal. 20% of the activities that we do will produce 80% of our results. So if my results are that I'm looking for is to add X number of agents to my team, then I know that there's going to be 20% of the activities that are out there that I can think of that are actually going to result in 80% of the production or 80% of the results that are there. So identifying what that 20% is and what that most important activities are is, again, in that bucket of the purpose and the P that's in that. And then the last one is M, and that is taking massive action. And I think that, again, if you can figure out and be very focused on the results that you're looking for, drive and connect an actual purpose within it, and what are those top 20% activities, right, that are going to feed into that. And then within the M, take action. Don't wait. Don't sit back. Do everything in your power to take massive action to follow through with that. So just a tip that I heard this morning that I thought was really powerful and actually kind of dovetails nicely into our conversation here. So, RP.
Yeah, we're reading the same books, or we're listening to the same books. The only thing I would add to that is that, sometimes we get pretty ethereal about our business. We're like, in 5 years, 5 years goes by in a heartbeat. If anybody's got kids, you see them grow up, and 5 years is nothing. But I would just say break it down. So RPM today, RPM this week, RPM this month, and RPM this year, or the next 5 years, or whatever. Because we get so like, oh no, someday we'll get, I will do X, Y, and Z someday. If you can break it down daily and go, what results am I looking for today? What purpose do I have today? What massive action do I have to do today? Then all the rest of it kind of falls in line. If you have, a strong enough mission or a strong enough, kind of a thought process of where you want to go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brad. John, I want to give you a chance. Any parting wisdom, anything that you wish you would have known earlier on in your career as you were building teams or growing companies that you think was vital or valuable parts of information that has influenced or really grown you that you'd like to give?
It's a really simple little quip. I don't really need to be anybody else other than who I am. That's it.
Wow.
That's enough.
Yes. That's fantastic. It actually goes directly with integrity like we're talking about. And again, trying to be somebody else actually many times creates a house of cards and problems down the road versus being who I am, attracting those people, right? And the rest takes care of it.
When I first came into real estate, I wanted to be an expert. I wanted to show them all the reasons why they should use me. All of that fell by the wayside when I realized I just needed them to trust me and see me as the person who would help them and put their needs first. Yeah. And once they saw that, the rest of it didn't matter, so I could find out what I needed to know, direct them to what they needed to go to. Really, it was just building that connection with people. And the same is true in running a brokerage. People just need to see who you are, build that trust with you. And once they have that, the rest is all icing.
Fantastic. Tony, Ben, Brad, any questions for John that you guys would like to ask as we kind of wrap up our time?
No,
Not
thank you
really.
for your time. Thank you.
It was great being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting this together.
I have just a comment for John. I mean, obviously you've gotten to the point where, you know, I don't know. Lee Brown is somebody I listen to about authentic behavior, but I do think that you have a great perspective in which, if you could, you know, this is the first time I've heard your name, not because we're not in the same marketplace, obviously, but I think that you have a niche, obviously, to reach out to those people who are, you know, again, they're afraid of being authentic. They're, you know, that is our business function. The more authentic you are, the more people are drawn to you. And so I just, you know, I encourage you to do whatever you need to do to be more public about that, because I think there's a lot of coaching opportunity there as well. I just, you know, because, you know, I only run a team with a small amount of folks, but I see that struggle every day that people come in and go, wait, you know, but I wear blue jeans and I have a pickup truck, or how are people going to respond to that? I'm like, they're going to respond to it the same way I do, or anybody around you does. You know, it is something that I think that is definitely deserved in our industry. You know, more authentic people not faking it, people not, you know, dressing up for no reason, or dressing up when it's appropriate, whatever it is. It's just those things that the more of who you are that comes out from real estate, the better off we all are. So I appreciate you being on this.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. I'm doing an ethics class in May for I'm hoping about 650 people.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
I'm going to take what you said to heart.
Yeah, good deal.
Tony, did you want to share anything or any questions that you got for John at all?
No, I just appreciate his time and his insights.
Thank you, Tony.
Well, perfect. Thank you guys for your time here. John, I really appreciate it. And actually, it's great that you said in your words of advice, and then also the Lincoln quote. And really, it kind of dovetails to this last quote in terms of your words of advice on how to fit everything in. And that is, of course, do your best. And then, of course, leave the rest that's there. And I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln where basically he says, when I lay down the reins of this administration, I want to have one friend left, and that friend is inside myself. And I think that when you can go home at the end of the day, knowing that you gave your best and you did everything you could for your teams, for your clients, for your family, and so on, you know, again, being able to sleep with yourself is the most important part, and having that friend inside that's there. And I think that, again, kind of encapsulates what the conversation that we talked about in regards to integrity is having integrity within, right? Having alignment of who I am and, again, what I do. And people will follow that. People want authenticity. They want transparency. It actually will encourage and grow your leadership and grow your influence rather than pull back. And you heard it from the master, John. And so, again, John, I really appreciate your time that's there. And thank you for all of you that's there. We're going to send out the answers to the worksheet. So if you missed any questions or anything, fill-ins, we'll make sure that you guys get the answers that are there. We'll also be posting the videos, last week's video and this week's video shortly, so that for those of our friends that weren't able to make it, they'll be able to watch that and catch up with us. Next week, we'll have another special guest, and we will be talking about empowerment. So again, really we're building upon things. We already talked a little bit about, Brad was sharing, again, finding complements and how, you know, individuals that maybe, again, balance our strengths and our weaknesses that are there. And so next week, again, we'll be focusing on empowerment. So with that, thank you guys for your time, and make it a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.